Welcome to Magical Books for Kids, a podcast sponsored by Magic Everywhere, Inc., a company based in Florida. Hosted by Michael John Sullivan, this is your place to hear the very best children's stories and an opportunity to get to know your favorite authors. Now, here is Michael John Sullivan.
Welcome to Magical Books for Kids. I'm Michael John Sullivan, and thank you again for joining us for another edition of our weekly podcast. It's heard free on Apple, Spotify, Google Play, YouTube, as well as our website, magiceverywhereinc.com. We're excited to welcome children's author Cazzy Zahursky. She is a wife and mother of 2 girls and a dog and a grandmother to 2 lizards. She enjoys spending time with her family, traveling, volunteering at her children's schools, and working out. She stays busy and is inspired by her girls on a daily basis. She loves teaching them lessons through storytelling. Whether she's playing around with her girls or practicing yoga with her husband, she enjoys every memorable moment. And again, thank you again, Cazzy, for joining us here on Magical Books for Kids. I was very impressed with your books, first of all. But first, let's start from the beginning. As a child, what were some of your favorite books?
Well, first of all, thank you, Michael, for having me on. And I had a lot of favorite books growing up. Ones I can remember that I don't know if many parents read this to their children, but my mother read me a lot of Aesop fables, and the ones with the little lessons.
Those are wonderful, yeah.
Yeah. And then I had a lot of other favorites like Amelia Bedelia and the what's it called?
That's the one that I remember, especially because my daughters now, they're not your daughter's ages right now. They're 27 and 23. So, but the Amelia books, I remember. Yeah.
And the Ramona Quimby. And I remember really being inspired at the chapter book age. But I've always had a love for books. And my daughters now are, of course, my inspiration. And they're 3 and 7, and when I was young, I would always start. I enjoyed writing. I wrote in school, and it's funny. Recently, my mom actually sent me some in the mail. She lives on the other side of the country, so she just mailed me a bunch of books that I wrote when I was little. And I thought
that's great.
Yeah. So I've always enjoyed writing, and in addition to illustrating and drawing. My grandmother was an artist, and so I remember my fondest memories with her were sitting and drawing and painting together. So of course, years later, when I was older, I started taking creative writing classes, and I was doing journalism, and I was in class as an elective, and I was an editor in yearbook. And then due to my dad's influence, I actually I took a little break from all the creative thinking to going into biotechnology. My dad encouraged me to go the science route. So I did. And then I tried really hard. It wasn't for me. And then I decided to go back into the arts. And then I actually did acting for many, many years. And then I had my children. And along the way, I always enjoyed writing stories for my friends who had children. And I would write little stories that were personalized for them. And then when my daughters came around, I started to write stories for them and thought, you know what, I should share this with the world. So the little lessons. But yeah, so I like books. As a child, I was really inspired by books that had taught little lessons. So my stories, I want them to be entertaining. I want them to elicit emotion, whether it's laughter or tears, but there's also a little lesson being taught in each of my stories.
No, it sounds like your mom was your inspiration as far as reading and sort of moving that process along. You do the same with your daughters, I would assume, right?
Oh yeah. My first daughter, we literally went to the library every week and checked out. From the time she was 1 or even able to walk, we would go to the library, check out at least 20 books a week. And she just, to this day, she's reading now, but she still really enjoys having a book read to her. But she can sit and listen to a full chapter book of like 100 plus pages, and just loves reading and being read to. And I'm working on that with my 3-year-old.
Right, but she's off to a good start, like you got off to a good start with your mom. So you've sort of like passed it down through the generations. I mean, it sort of
Yeah.
resonates with me because you have 2 girls and we had 2 girls. We have 2 girls,
Yeah.
you know,
Okay.
older, 27, 23, as opposed to yours. So we went through
But they're
those years. Yeah.
4 years apart as well. Like
Yeah,
mine.
isn't that something interesting? How like you're behind us, but those years go so fast. I can tell
They
you that.
really do. I already feel it.
Yeah, you're feeling that too. But the wonderful thing is you've written 2 books, okay? And the thing I love about it is you have a lot of people that gave you ratings and everything like that. You have over 100 ratings for your 2 particular books. Many people have a hard time getting people to do that for their books. It takes some time for people to do that and everything. So how did you manage to do that? Is that more of a marketing and promotion thing? Because we all have to be these marketers and promotion people now today.
Yeah, that's what I find is the hardest part of being a self-published author, is the marketing, and that's not really my background. Like I said, it's science or the arts,
Right.
and marketing is definitely not my background. So I find that to be my biggest struggle. But what I do find to be helpful is the fact that I do have 2 daughters that are at the age appropriate, for kids' books. So my 7-year-old, she's in 1st grade, and I've befriended a lot of um, her classmates' parents, and I volunteer a lot at her school. And I was actually volunteering at her library, at the school library. So just making connections like that. And then my daughter has a lot of friends that go to other schools. And then my preschooler, my 3-year-old, she too goes to a different school. And then of course I have access to the parents and the director of that school. And so that really opens up my, all my network of people who have children. And then it kind of is word of mouth. And then I also do a lot of paid marketing, like through Amazon. And yeah, that definitely helps. And
Yeah,
then
it's tough. We have to be the jack of all trades. As I said, I was impressed that you have hardcover books because that means you have to print them because Amazon doesn't do hardcover printing. You have to send them the books. Is that what happens, or
yes, so my first book, Escape to Fairy Kingdom, I actually did a Kickstarter for that book. So that enabled me, I used that platform as a means of pre-ordering. So it was one way of marketing. And so after I funded my Kickstarter, I had a bunch of people who had already ordered the book. And then I was able to then do a mass production of my books in hardcover. And then the second time around, I just decided to try a different approach. And so I did it through Amazon KDP, where it's done print on demand, where it's printed on demand, but that's soft cover. But there is an option to also have a hardcover version on Amazon.
So you can do both. That's great.
Yes.
Yeah. And how did you do with the Kickstarter? I spoke to somebody who had a very successful one. Her name was Kim Ann.
Oh.
And yeah, she had a very successful one. I think she raised like close to $6,000 for a couple of books. And she said that she's what they call a Kickstarter queen, meaning that she's involved. Yeah. Anytime she sees a Kickstarter out there, she wants to help an author. I think that's great because we all have to help each other. And how did that go for you, the Kickstarter itself?
Well, when I did my Kickstarter, I did as much research as I could. And preparing for the Kickstarter, I would say it was just as much effort and time as creating the book. And I wrote and illustrated the book. So
right. Yeah, you spent a lot of time doing that. So
yeah. My first book took me about 2 years to complete because I had a then not even 1-year-old and almost 5-year-old. And then everything was new. And I, like you had mentioned earlier, definitely wore all the hats, trying to figure out formatting and publishing and just everything that's involved. But as far as my Kickstarter went, it was a lot of work. I did a lot of research and I started to back a lot of other Kickstarters because, as you mentioned, we kind of have to have each other's backs as authors.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And So I support a lot of other people. And then I stayed up writing personalized emails and reaching out to old friends and new friends, and just explaining my dream of actually publishing, even though I've written stories over the years, many of them, but publishing an actual book. And you'd be surprised how many people are supportive and want to see you, like succeed in your goals and dreams. So I did have to, even though I had, a sort of planned out email, I personalized and tailored each email to each.
Exactly right.
And
right.
so I was really surprised by how many people not only supported me, but were very generous about it. I did start since I really was new to everything. And now I feel if I were to do a Kickstarter now, I know a whole lot more, and hopefully I'd be even more successful. But I did start the bar relatively low, set the bar relatively low initially,
Well,
because
sure.
I worried.
Right? Anything over it, you set the low expectation. Anything over it is icing on the cake, so to speak.
Exactly. That's what I figured. And I did go, I think, a good amount over. I think
that's great. That's great. Yeah. That's all you want to do, is you want to set the bar reasonable, and you'll have a better chance of feeling better about the process as well. And it gives you a little bit more inspiration to move forward. And as you said, your network and everything. I think I always say this, Kickstarters, if you have a little bit, like if something for like $10 or something like that, a lot of people will do it. They
yeah, exactly.
feel that they're helping, whether it's $10 or $20 or whatever it is. They just want to be there and help, be part of your dream in that sense.
Absolutely.
Right. So you have these two lovely girls and a husband that supports you, as well as a dog and two lizards. Now, how big are these lizards, first of all? Because the lizard who loves a blizzard, okay? And I've always been curious with lizards. So how big are your lizards?
Well, one of them is full grown. She is a crested gecko, and she's about 6 inches. And when I say 6 inches, that's
Geico commercial. Is that the one that does the Geico?
Sort of, yeah.
Okay.
But she's about 6 inches. And when I say 6 inches, that includes from the head to the tail. So she's not actually bigger than she might sound, because it includes her tail. And she's nocturnal, so we don't really get to see her unless we reach into her little cave.
Really? So she's up at night frolicking while you guys are sleeping.
Yes. Yeah. And then we have a bearded dragon, which is still relatively young.
Okay.
I want to say 1.5 years, but they grow to, and he is getting big. His name is Toothless. My daughter named
Toothless
after her favorite character, Toothless from How to Train Your Dragon. And he is currently, from nose to tail, probably a foot, but he is expected to get at least 2 feet. So
wow, how interesting that will be, huh?
Yes, it's already huge.
Yeah.
And they say that you can buy harness and take them for walks and treat them like dogs, which will be that interesting family on the block if we do.
Right. Because you never know. I normally don't hear that people keep lizards. I mean, a few people I've known, but it's interesting that. Is that you, or is that your husband, or is that the girls, or is that
all my daughter, my oldest daughter. She's a girly girl, but when it comes to reptiles, she loves them.
Wow, good for her. Yes. Yeah. And you have a dog. How old's the dog?
We have a dog, Daisy, and she's 12 now. She's getting on the older side.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, we used to have 3 dogs all at once, but now we're
all right.
At one point we were outnumbered by children, and we still are outnumbered by children and animals.
Right. So you're a very busy person every day, because you're dealing with 2 very young daughters. You're writing. You're dealing with lizards and dogs and everything like that. So
yes.
Was there anything that inspired you to become a children's writer? Anything that inspired you to write the first book, which is what Barnaby believes in himself? Is that?
Escape to Fairy Kingdom is the first one.
Oh, was the first one, Escape to Fairy Kingdom? Okay. Yes. And so what inspired you to write that one?
like I said, I've always really enjoyed writing. I've always also very much enjoyed drawing and illustrating. So I feel like I've always sort of just been doing it. And I also mentioned that I would make personalized little books for birthday presents for my friends'
Oh,
daughters and kids, not thinking, oh, I should publish books, but just doing it for fun, thinking it would be something unique and appreciated. And then when my second daughter came around, I've always been that person who's gone through life thinking, oh, wow, that would be a great lesson for as a kid. That could be a kid's book. That moment, that situation could be a great lesson for children in a children's book. But I didn't actually make it a reality until I had my second daughter. And I had even more ideas and even was even more inspired and thought, you know what? I want to write some books that would teach them lessons and also entertain them and be of value to them personally. And as I was doing this, I put even more effort into it. And I thought to myself, why don't I do this as, share it with the world and actually publish the book? So that's how my daughters, and I think most moms that I talk to who have written books say it's their children that have inspired them, or parents in
right.
general.
Right. And the Barnaby book, isn't it, has a slant about anti-bullying and things like
Yes.
that. Why don't you talk a little bit about that? Because anti-bullying is pretty big from what we've done. We've done an anti-bullying book, and it seems that the more we talk about it, the more bullying there is, which is where it's just. And I think everybody's gone through it. I went through it on the bus. I used to be pummeled because I was a little kid on the bus, and my parents finally took me off the bus because I was coming home with a bloody nose every day.
Oh, that's awful.
Yeah, but back then you didn't say anything. Back then you just said, I fell, I hit the seat, things like that. You were too ashamed to say something that some kid was pummeling me every day on the school bus. So talk a little bit about that, because I think that's a really important message that you have there.
Yeah, that is one of the themes. There's several themes that Barnaby believes is promoting in the book. But yes, anti-bullying, I think, is a really important lesson, that children need to be aware of, because bullying, I think, is far more common than we realize, especially now with social media and all these other platforms. And yeah, I think at some point every child or adult as a child kind of has experienced bullying at one point or another, and that's why it's important to not only teach to not be a bully, but also if you are the one being bullied, it's really important to teach them to speak up and teach them ways of reaching out to adults or ways of handling it. I know I can think of numerous. I won't get into it too personally, but I can even a friend of mine that was a good friend sort of bullied me, and I don't think she even realized she was doing it growing up. So I think we can all say we've experienced one form or another of it, and I think it's far more prevalent now, which, like you said, now that we're discussing it and having children's books about it, you would think that it would help fix it. But yeah, I think it's important.
If it reaches one person,
exactly,
that's all it counts. I mean, we had that happen to us when we did a anti-bullying book with a group called Destination Imagination, and we had kids coming up to us after the book was distributed, and they would tell us, and you thought, okay, it was worth all that effort, all that time, that if it reached a couple different people,
because that could change the entirety of their life. Like, it's the foundation of their lives. A child's life being bullied can really affect them.
Right. And many of the people that bully have been bullied themselves.
Exactly.
I remember, I look back and I said, geez, I bullied that kid. I was bullied, but I remember saying, I bullied that kid. I could have been a better friend or a better person.
Right. There's a movie I love. It's definitely not child friendly, but I don't know if you've seen The Color Purple. I mean, what is it, Danny Glover? He's this horrible bully, and then you come to discover that it's his father that bullied him, and so it was a learned behavior. And so if we can stop it, and like you said, just even one person, in fact, change it through one person, that makes a huge difference.
Exactly.
So I think it's important that and other lessons to teach them at a young age, and through children's books we can do that, because sometimes you can sit and explain or lecture or describe, and sometimes it doesn't really click for a child, but with a story and with something that's more relatable and entertaining, it might be more helpful. And that's all the more reason I think that children's books are so important.
Right. And so and people can get these books on Amazon. And I love the idea that you have it available for hard copy, because that's certainly good, because if the young little kids are handling the book, it's probably better to have them with hard copy as opposed to paperback.
Yeah.
Because you can hear the tearing. I can hear the tearing of the cover and everything like that.
Oh yeah, we've even had, what is it? Board books torn. Like, how did you do that?
Those board books, yeah, I remember those. Yeah, they'd be torn apart, or part of it would be torn over, or that part of it would be torn. It had the
yes, exactly. Or the ones with the pop up like flaps.
Right.
All of our household get torn.
Right. So I always give the opportunity for any author, if they wish, they don't have to, but if they'd like to read a favorite excerpt from one of their books, just to give the listener a feel of what your book sounds like if you're reading it, because obviously we have a lot of parents who listen to this, and a lot of grandparents who read to their children and grandchildren, and that's important. I think that's to me, it's one of the most wonderful bonding moments for a child, is to sit in the lap of a parent or a grandparent.
And just exactly the bond, the attention they have listening to that book, the curiosity, the imagination. It's just, it's magical. And
it is.
Magical.
It is. Yeah. So do you have okay, there it is. Barnaby Believes. Okay. It's a cute little bee and everything. So
he, as you mentioned, it does address bullying, but it also, I'd say the more primary theme is more, he has a big dream. He has a dream, and I think everyone deep down dreams of something or has an ultimate dream, and I think oftentimes that starts at an early age. Right. But he also, with some dreams, some people choose to try to pursue them because they're not always easy to pursue, and some choose, to wait or not to at all. But also with dreams comes fear. So he dreams of being a spelling bee champ, but
see, that makes sense.
Yes, and he has stage fright. So he loves spelling, and it's his passion to be the champion. But every time he goes up on stage, he has an overactive imagination that just terrifies him, and then he ends up getting scared. And so his hurdle that he has to jump over is getting over stage fright so that he can win the championship. Anyway, so the excerpt I would like to read is his mom is speaking to him at the end here. I don't know if this is giving the story away, but it's not really. But okay, so mom has a little discussion with him before the big finals, the spelling bee finals. So anyways, she says to him, everyone gets a little scared. You have to be scared before you can be brave. Being brave means you just keep doing something even when you're scared. And then she says, Dad, and I love you no matter what happens tomorrow. And so the message I'm trying to say is everyone gets scared, young, old, no matter. But in order to be brave, you have to do something even when you're scared. So you have to be scared before you can be brave. So that's a message.
Yeah, especially as children, we all have our inhibitions and everything like that, and our challenges. So we all go through it. I had stage fright all the time. I mean, I remember the one time I got up in high school, I was supposed to read this story, and you could hear my voice shaking and everything. But eventually I hosted a radio show. I did this, So as you do more of it, you become a lot more comfortable. I think that's what it is. So your books are actually something that all parents should have an opportunity to take a look at. So is there a particular place that we can find you? We're speaking to Cazzy Zahursky. She is a children's author who has hardcover books, parents. Think about that, hardcover books. So is there a way we can reach you or see your work?
Of course. At my social media, Instagram is Instagram at Cazzy Creates. And then I also have a Facebook page, which is Circle 10 Books, which is the publishing company that I created. And then you can reach me via email at cazzy@circletimebooks.com. And my books are available on Amazon as well as my website. They're also in a variety of brick and mortar stores across the nation. And I also have a couple more books coming out. The next one, Cardboard Rosie, will be published very soon. And I have 2 more in the works that I'm working on simultaneously, writing and illustrating. And yeah, that's where you can reach me.
So by the time this year ends, you'll have like 6 books. Is that what you're saying? Somewhere in that range, 5 or 6 books?
I'm not sure if the 2 that I'm working on, so there's one that's more or less complete and that'll be published soon, but the other 2, I'm still kind of in the more beginning phases. So that might be more next year, but.
Well, I'm going to spell, I'm going to spell your name in case people can't read what's on the bottom of this particular podcast, where it does say your name, by the way. It'll say your name and everything like that and where they can get a hold of you. But Cazzy Zahursky, Zahursky. You can Google her name. I did. I saw everything there. And congratulations on your wonderful books that teach a wonderful message for everybody out there, parents and adults. We can all learn from these books.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you having me.
And I'm Michael John Sullivan. Thank you again for joining us for another edition of Magical Books for Kids. This podcast is free on Apple, Spotify, Google Play, YouTube, as well as our website, magiceverywhereinc.com. Thanks again for joining.
Thank you for listening to Magical Books for Kids, a podcast sponsored by Magic Everywhere INC, a company based in Florida, hosted by Michael John Sullivan. This is your place to hear the very best children's stories and an opportunity to get to know your favorite authors. Join us for another fun storytelling podcast next week.